My special guest today is Allison Wittenberg, a Philadelphia native and the author of several books for young adults, including Maine Under Water, Tutored, Hollywood in Maine, Life is Fine, and Sweet Thing.
I always liked books, but more listening to books rather than actually reading it.
Mm-hmm.
So I did gravitate towards writing. I was told that I was a pretty good writer from a pretty early age. And that sort of pulled me along with all the other things that I really didn't have any aptitude in.
How do you find the courage to go out there and express in the way that you do through the book and feel that you're ready to put this in the world?
Well, I'm not sure that I did, but I tried my best. But I think that you get to a point where you can't lie anymore. It's just a matter of how honest you are, because that's the only way you're going to move past something like this. Pretending like things don't happen, pretending that you're not bothered by things, that's not really going to get you anywhere. And I could say I've healed a lot by reading particular authors.
I think part of our devolution, our social devolution, is based on the hypocrisy of not being honest with ourselves. Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horriyat. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and how we can help. My special guest today is Allison Wittenberg, a Philadelphia native and the author of several books for young adults, including Maine Under Water, Tutored, Hollywood in Maine, Life is Fine, and Sweet Thing. That's where it all started. That's where all the books started, with Sweet Thing.
Yes.
Her poetry, yes. Her poetry has been published widely in places such as New Orleans Review, Columbia Review, Feminist Studies, and her collection, They Were Horrible Cooks.
Mm-hmm.
And Allison is an Army vet, which we'll get to in a minute. And the reason she's here is because her new book is published by Compassiviste Publishing, and it's called Killing the Father of Our Country, also a young adult novel. Hello, Allison, and welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues.
Hello, Ali, and thanks for having me.
It's going to be a pleasure. I want to start with a little information for the audience about your childhood, personal, professional background, including your time in the Army. Tell us how Allison evolved to who she is right now, sitting here. From as far as you remember and as far important things that happened in your life, milestones.
Let's see. I am from Philadelphia. Both my parents are from Philadelphia, but both their parents were originally from Columbia, South Carolina. So I thought that was kind of funny. They have no relation beyond that. It's not anything weird or strange, but mm-hmm. I mean, they followed the same migration to Philadelphia, and they met, and I would say it was a fairy tale type thing, because but there were some bumps along the way. So my father was 15 years older than my mom, and it was the first marriage for both of them. So they were very, very different people. My father was very dominant, and my mother was very, let's just say, not dominant. Let's just say, she let a lot of things sort of happen without her say so. So in my family, I have an older brother, and then a younger sister, and we we grew up, first couple of, well, maybe until elementary school in Philadelphia, and then we moved out to the first tier suburb, not deep into the suburbs. I went through a mixture of Catholic school and public school. And the beginning, not that great of a student at all, but definitely got better as things went along, and I got deeper into my what I wanted to do. Now, what did I want to do? I think I was just sort of what is there to do? It was I don't know. My dad was a salesman, and my mom never worked outside the home. So, in terms of what was placed in front of me, not not a whole lot to go by. But I always liked books, but more listening to books rather than actually reading it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like to be read to.
Okay.
And I think, I'm just an auditory listener. So this podcast
Serves you
works out good.
perfectly.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. I was looking at your past, your past podcasts, and I said I've got to listen to all of them because I do like just listening to what people have to say.
Right.
You don't have to write it down for me. I say as an author, but I like when people just talk, and I can sort of get things out of that. So I did gravitate towards writing. I was told that I was a pretty good writer from a pretty early age. And that sort of pulled me along with all the other things that I really didn't have any aptitude in, or teachers didn't really have the tolerance to try and like trigonometry and things like that. So I moved along, and I did major in English, not in writing specifically, and I did get a master's degree. That was the University of Wisconsin. So from Wisconsin, I spent some time in St. Paul, Minneapolis, and then I came back to Philadelphia. My father was very sick with Parkinson's, and by that time, my mother had passed away. And she was, as I said, she was that much younger than my dad, but my dad was outlived her by quite a lot. Now, in between that, I was in the military, and actually my father being sick was the reason for my separation from the military, because it was this was 2004, so that's after 9/11. So basically everyone's on alert, and everyone had to be ready to go in a moment's notice. And he was in intensive care. He was intubated, and that's when I had a honorable discharge. So what were the things that I did in the military? I was a medical lab tech. I was attached to an evacuation hospital, and the medical training that I have, I got through the military. So, I was very grateful for that. I liked moving around with the military, but I was never deployed anywhere. I guess I could have been because my unit actually, the one that I was separated from, they did go to Iraq. So, and they did all come back. Then they all, yeah. So, it worked out, that way. And I still kept in touch with them and all of that. And, they told me stories of accidentally going into the demilitarized zone. And, so like, what was it like, sort of day to day? And it seemed like it was very encapsulated. This is a evacuation hospital. So, and it was just a lot of things going on at once during that time. And, I didn't ask to be separated. But as I said, these two things were happening. My father had, Parkinson's disease is a progressive disease. But I couldn't see that. I knew my father, even though not the biggest guy in the world, but I was like, oh, this guy, he's, he can always take care of himself. He's very strong. But I did see even when he was, as I said, intubated, immobile, and very, very far into dementia, I thought, oh, he'll come back. This will all, this is just passing. And, it was a lot of being pulled several different ways at once during that time. Now, I was writing all along, but until, both my parents had passed before I had gotten anything, a novel published. So, like, shortly after my father passed away, I had gotten Sweet Thing accepted, and Sweet Thing is this, it's a middle grade YA, happy ending, type of piece. And then, for the next 4 years, like 2006, for the next 4 years, I had 4 novels come out, like just back to back from Random House. And, the second one that I had was Life is Fine. And it was about an 80, no, sorry, he was 70-year-old, substitute teacher, and this 15-year-old high school student is in love with him. So, and of course it's, he does a very honorable, decent person and pushes her away. But, it's told, from that, there's like a quasi romantic comedy from one person's, from the teenage delusional mindset. So that's Life is Fine. And, that one I think is about the closest, but even with that, I don't think I got heavy, deep, and real. This book, Killing the Father of Our Country, is about the most, you could say maybe depressing I've ever been, or I guess intense I've ever been, because it's very, I'm showing domestic violence, and I'm showing it in a very, explicit way. And I hope it does help people to feel not alone, or not,
Helpless.
helpless. So,
So even though you call it depressing, really, it's empowering in a sense. That's what you're hoping out of it, to get people out of that helplessness and to feel more empowered and more able to do something about the state they're in.
That's what I'm hoping, because I rewrote it several times. I hopefully you didn't just get my first draft, but I rewrote it, and as time periods changed and things happened in the world, I took things out or put things in. But the core of it is, to younger people trying to survive, and the choices that they make to survive. And I'd be interested to see what people think.
You talk about domestic violence. Where does that come from? I mean, why pick domestic violence?
Definitely, it was in my family, and I would say generationally, it was in my family. It's not necessarily my current family. I think I broke the cycle, as they say. But I don't think people necessarily looked at it quite the way we look at it today. I think people thought of it's discipline. People looked at it like kids are just mini adults. They're not necessarily, they don't have kid feelings. They don't have little feelings. And that's a way to keep people in line. And I think a lot of different elements are going into that mindset. And I think sometimes people think that they're doing it out of, that's how they were shown. I don't know if it's love, but that's how they were shown. to be part of a family. So that was their initiation. So
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be the initiation, or this is the way to parent, I think.
Right. And to be honest, I've tried to understand this kind of parenting, and I think it doesn't necessarily or generally come from a place of violence or a place of hate or wanting to hurt someone. It genuinely, like you said, you said something that triggered my thought again. It comes from, which is what I always say, it comes from a place of what they understand as love being. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, a father or a mother would hit their child for something, and they think this is the best I can do for them because I'm not really hurting them, even though it may be scary, traumatic, all of those things, but they're not thinking at that level. But it'll remind them to not do this again because this is bad for them. You see,
Mm-hmm.
it generally the thought goes that way, right? And then they don't think of the act and they don't think of the repercussions, and so it continues, and they think they love their children, or they love their partner, or whatever action was committed in that moment of uh, generally speaking. And it's hard to kind of break the cycle of that. It's a lot harder. I find it a lot harder to break the cycle of violence that comes through, say, alcoholism or addictions and stuff like that in the household, a dysfunctional household, or a household with a lot of anger issues and systemic or personal problems. Whereas when you
Mm-hmm.
go into, you know, this is how I grew up. This is how my parents grew up. I mean, it's normal. We love our kids. We discipline them. Or I love my wife, and I'll hit her to show her I love her because it angered me that this happened, or she did something that's not good for her or us or the family or something. And so people do that. And I think the important part is to kind of show people that it's not right. And I think I'm happy to see that over the last decade, a lot's changed in that direction. A lot of people are starting to understand the deeper connotations of domestic violence, and even if they were prone to that or going to be that way as well, they're starting to say, "Hey, just because my parents did it, it's not right." And when you say you break that cycle, I mean that's what happened with you, didn't it? I mean, you thought about it and you said, "No, no, I know my mom, my dad, whoever did this, but it's not right."
Yeah, yeah, and even right and wrong. I mean, I think when it was happening, I think, it was more from my dad. He thought it was right.
Mm-hmm.
I did
Mm-hmm.
get that feeling. I mean, and to not react like that is wrong. So everything is
Yes.
a little upside down. It's a little warped. And, I did worry about that when I was writing, Killing the Father of My Country, that, am I really being fair? Because
Mm-hmm.
I am telling it from the two brothers' perspective. I'm not telling it from the person who's actually doing the abuse. So is that really fair? I mean, are you really telling the story if you are telling it from these people who feel like they have to get out from under this,
Mm-hmm.
rather than are we taking it back far enough?
And when you write that story, and when you write from that perspective, which is where I was going, and you led into it, how do you find that voice, like you said, to be fair or to express it accurately? How do you find that voice? Because I think, to me, that's where you connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
It's that voice, when you write it from that voice, because I could show you tens of thousands of medical research reports, doctors writing about these things, and books from psychiatrists and everything on why this is not good parenting or whatever. And it doesn't connect with people because it's told from this academic kind of medical standpoint
Mm-hmm.
that is, I don't understand that. That's not for me. But when it's told from somebody who looks like me, dresses like me, lives in a community like mine, and is me essentially, with,
Mhm.
two differences out of 100. It's me. And then I understand. And then I say, ooh, okay, I see
Mhm.
that. That's me right now. That's what I'm doing. I shouldn't be doing that, or I should be doing that. And people connect through the storytelling, right? That's what the expression's about. I mean, the personal experiences of those people connect. I kind of see this in movies a lot too, when you watch a movie and, there's a moment that's intense or funny or whatever, and it sticks with you and you remember it and it stays with you for years, maybe. A lot of times it's because you had an experience that you can connect to that.
Mhm.
So your memory connects you to the film through that experience. And it's the same thing with books. It's a mode of expression. It's
Mhm.
no different than, some people call it, books are for education and stuff. And I say, not necessarily, we're taking Allison's mind and we're giving it to you. That's the presentation. Here's Allison's mind. This is what she wanted to say about this issue. And this is what she's bringing from her experience. And she's now putting it out into the world. And 8 billion people have access to it. And so, what do those people think? Does it resonate with them? Do they understand it, the story? Do they understand what she was trying to say? Do they have comments? Have they been affected by what Allison
Mhm.
said? So all of those become then, the reflection, and what comes back to you essentially from that storytelling. So how do you how do you find the courage to go out there and express in the way that you do through the book and feel that you're ready to put this in the world? When does that happen for you? When does it happen that you say, okay, I'm brave enough to put that in the world because I think it's good?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I did, but I tried my best. I tried my
Right.
best, and I think there are definitely parts of of the book that affect me a little bit differently than other parts. It I underline that this is it's a fictional depiction
Mm-hmm.
of things, but I think that you know you get to a point where you can't lie anymore,
Right.
and I think as long as it took me to get everything together, I wasn't lying by the end of it, and it it hits a lot of the way that I see the effect, with these two brothers. It really is, it's monopolizing their life in
Mm,
a way that has to be exercised somehow. And there's a lot of layers to it, but there's no way out. This will always be with them no matter what they decide to do. So I think, it's just a matter of how honest you are, because that's the only way you're going to move past something like this. Keeping it, pretending like things don't happen, pretending that you're not bothered by things.
mm,
That's not really going to get you anywhere. And I could say I've healed a lot by reading particular authors and just hearing in a non-sensational way, but hearing people give just their perspective, and it's some celebrities tell their story, but then it's nice to hear just maybe the person next door. You never
mm.
know, and believe me, it is next door. And
Yes.
that's the thing. I mean, this is a universal type of thing, but there's so much shame that's involved with it that people generally they want to pretend like it only happens to certain people. Maybe they put class to it. Maybe they put
Yeah. They stereotype it and then it's
you know.
fine. It's fine to do it that way, but then it doesn't happen to me because I don't
Mhm.
want to be in that stereotype, or I've worked so hard to come above or beyond it that I don't want to look at myself in the mirror and say, oh my God, I am that person.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's very hypocritical, isn't it? Because I think part of our devolution, our social devolution, is based on the hypocrisy of not being honest with ourselves. Because you're absolutely right. A lot of people will. I did that for a very long time in my life. I had this very violent break where you know, I killed one alley and I gave birth to a second alley. So, I changed completely. And that happened because it took me about, a good decade of hypocrisy, of, looking at, for example, my financial success and saying, that is the goal. That's what's making me happy. And it's not. But, I'm going to lie to myself and say, oh, look at this car. Oh, look at my new house. Oh, look at my new clothes. And, keep lying to myself that there's so much going wrong in my life that I'm just kind of brushing away or swimming through because I can with the money that I have. I can just brush them off with the money that I have. I can brush off not being happy in my relationship because, you know what? We'll just go on a vacation to Paris. There's so much to do. It doesn't matter if we love each other or not. It's hypocrisy, right? And so it takes a long time to kind of, or not necessarily a long time, but it takes a very focused amount of time that um, you can look at yourself and be honest with yourself. And that's where the resilience part comes in your book. It's kind of the coping mechanism, being resilient and honest to get over things you're going through.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I liked what you were saying. The killing the part of yourself. I don't know. I knew a friend who said I spent. He said he spent 10 years being very, very angry, and that saved him. It's like he said, "Well, if you've gotten all out of your system, then good for you." But I guess I look at it sort of the other way. I mean, it's like fits and starts. Whenever you think you're over something, you sort of wonder if you actually are really, really
Is it
over it.
is it so important to be over something more so than it is to accept that you can live with it?
Yes, yeah.
You know,
Acceptance.
right?
Acceptance is a big thing.
Right. That's kind of like what I try to tell people, right? I mean, you say the same thing too. It's not so much about getting over it or forgetting it. You can go through trauma, right? Domestic violence. You can end up in the hospital. You come out and you keep doing this thing, which a lot of doctors also kind of, promote. And I think it's ridiculous. Forget it or try to push it out of your mind or it never happened or don't think about it or any of that. I'm thinking, what do you mean forget it? Like it's here, it's there, it happened. It's part of my life. It's part of me. So don't tell me to forget it. Instead, tell me how I can accept that this happened and the reasons for why it happened and how it happened and be okay with that and know that I've gained the knowledge and the wisdom to now live my life in a way that I would not like that to be a repeated event in my life in an accepted
Mm,
manner and to live with it. And so I'll be fine forever living with that having happened because also you said the word shame. And I like that you said that because that's part of the reason why we want to forget it, right? I mean, you feel ashamed that something happened in your life. And generally, it's not you who should be ashamed of it because you are victimized in that happening. So it's normally um, a wrongful assignment of shame that we put on ourselves because we're not willing or ready to accept or we don't know how to accept. And so, and that's where compassion comes in your book, essentially. There's a lot of that as well because I think that's the gateway to acceptance is to love yourself and to just love and to allow love to um, and compassion to kind of give you that essence of growing into that acceptance.
yeah. Yeah. No, beautifully put. And yeah, forget that is, what is that song? Let it go. But maybe
Yeah.
that's not just, get over it sort of thing. I mean,
Mhm.
that's not really helping. But yeah, I definitely like what you said. And, um, learning to love, I think, because love is so tied up with we just think of romantic,
Mm.
eros. We're not necessarily thinking of, the depth, the sharing, and all of that. That's what people don't necessarily.
Yeah, the caring, the sharing,
Hmm.
the compassion,
Yes.
community,
Yes.
all of those things, right? That's love. I mean, that's all part of love. Because a lot of times, the other love you're talking about is just a very kind of exponentially grown out lust. You could have. I mean, look at it this way: you meet someone, it's amazing. You're really excited about the conversations, you're attracted physically, you're doing things that you love together. It's just a whole new vibe in your life. You're feeling amazing about it. And, it becomes love. The graduation of it kind of becomes love. But what does that really mean, right? In a sense. But when you look at community, when you look at your activity, your level of involvement in improving lives and improving circumstances, that is an easily kind of measured or gauged improvement that you're impacting. And so when you see yourself doing that, you can really understand love from that perspective in a very mathematical way, even. And I tell people, I can see love in a community so much easier than I can see love between two people, because
Mm.
between two people, there's so many elements involved that it's kind of like an economics equation. My first degree was economics, okay? And I loved it until I got into philosophy later, because then I was like, wait a minute, economics is just numerical philosophy, because all of the macro theories are based on if you hold this constant and this doesn't change and you can control that, this is the answer. Well,
Mm.
excuse me, none of this can ever be controlled. None of that can ever stay constant. And we don't even know what this is. So
Mm.
it's just theory. But when you put it into effect, you don't know. So with a relationship, it's the same thing. It's like, for example, do they really love each other? Or is it that they've been on a 8-month vacation and it was so amazing that they feel in love? Do they really love each other? Or is it the cooking that one partner's in love with? Or what is it, right? There's so many little elements. But when you look at a community or people helping or people caring or people sharing or people even supporting their friends, it's just so easy to see that they do it because of love. There's no reciprocity in a way that is capitalistic or advantageous for you to fall into that groove of love. It's just a humanitarian kind of love,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and that's sort of when you talk about community,
Hmm.
that I think is a problem, because I think more often we have collections of people. We
Mhm.
don't have community.
Yes, yes, that's a
And
huge problem.
yeah, and then a crisis happens, or something, and then you're supposed to think collectively. And it's like, well, wait a minute, where is where's the love?
Hmm. Hmm.
Where's the uh, the bond, and you have to make bonds. Definitely it can be forged by fire, but it's a lot easier to just when the sun is shining, make friends rather than a crisis.
Yes. And you know what? I love that you separated a collection of people from community, because a lot of people will say, what is a community? It's a collection of people. No. I think and that's where the word hypocrisy really kicks in, because I'll give you an example. In the 60s, you had Martin Luther King.
Mm-hmm.
He come about and he's trying to make change. Change happened. Laws changed. Actual laws changed. Change actually happened, right? And why the change happened? Because there was community. People agreed collectively that this is wrong. that the segregation is wrong, for example, okay? When Rosa Parks said, no, I'm sitting here, there was a collection of people that became a community because their ethics made the community that
Yes,
this
yes.
is ethically wrong. So they stood for that morality. Fast forward 50 years, BLM happens. No laws change because it's exactly what you say. It's a collection of people who came for the protests, who came for whatever was happening. A lot of celebrities donated a lot of money. A lot of things happened, but none of that engaged into a moral code of a community to say this was so inherently wrong that there has to be a law that now changes this so that it can never happen systemically.
Mm.
That never happened. See, Martin Luther King changed the law so that certain things can never happen again. Right?
Yeah.
BLM, with the billions of dollars at their disposal, all of the voices of the world behind, I mean, not just US, I mean, we're talking from the UK, from South Africa, from Hong Kong, you know? Like when I think of that, I'm like, wait a minute, you guys walked in Hong Kong. Why? What do you know about American? What do you know about these issues that are very American? They're not even Canadian. They're not, in the depth of it, it's not even a Canadian issue. It's a very American issue. How much do you know that you stood in solidarity? Or did you? Or did you understand? No, you probably saw the social media. You probably were also excitable about it and whatever. And he's like, sure, I'll stand with this cause. But I mean, the difference was the collection of people were not ethically moved to stand to the point that things changed. Whereas 50 years ago, people stood with the morals. And I think that's part of the deterioration. And it's caused by hypocrisy because I'm willing to comment about George Floyd on social media, but I'm not willing to stand ground for it. See, Martin Luther King got killed. How many people are willing to get shot for morals today? What community do we have that is willing to get shot for morals today? Because the Panthers did. They were all ready.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that community today. And I love that you separated between collection of people, because you can have 1 million people
Mm-hmm.
walk down a street as a collection of people. There'll be no change done. And the cops will just stand on the sidelines, just make sure that you don't break the windows of stores and stuff because insurance and all this other stuff. But that's all it's for, because you're harmless. You're not going to make change. You're not aiming for change, probably even. Your protest is a business on its own.
Mm.
But you could also be a community. And that's where, change happens in community.
Well, that's his book. Was it Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community?
Mm-hmm.
We do have chaos.
Yes,
Calling
yes,
itself community.
yes. And we
But
have the education to build community, right? We're not lacking the
we do
education.
and
We're
we
just lacking
don't.
the implementation.
Yeah, we do and we don't. I think there's a lot more noise than there was. I don't know. I wasn't uh, there during the 60s, but
I
I
wasn't either.
yeah, no, but I'm just thinking there was a lot less noise. There was a lot more focus but you have voices coming from, not saying that everyone shouldn't be heard, but
Right.
there's so much to cut through. And there's so much, Martin Luther King he was a godsend. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he was very, very clear. And there's moments in history where somebody can just sort of cut through everything and just, charismatic, grab us, maybe for good or bad. But this is
Yeah,
happening.
definitely, because Hitler did the same for bad. I mean, it's not a far reach to say who was the most charismatic bad person. I mean, when he was giving speeches, women were just like, oh my
Yeah.
God. So, there you go. It can work both ways. But, focusing on the good, essentially, that's what the charisma does, right? The charisma is supposed to inspire a
Sucks you in.
community.
Yeah.
Yes, well, that's what
Mhm.
it does. It inspires a community, and
But,
when you say
oh, go ahead, please.
no, go.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, I don't want to get into talking about the latest election here in America, but it does seem like it's almost like they're almost trying to do it backwards with charisma. They're trying to get the blocks of people and say, well, here it is, here's the product, rather than the product, actually. But I think, and I really question in terms of if someone can rise up grassroots anymore.
Yes, very good question, because you're absolutely right. What happened in your recent elections is community was built. There were so many people
Mm-hmm.
against Trump and against Trumpism and against all the issues that Trump would bring to the US. But Trump took that and said, wait a minute, where's my community? Let me focus on my community. Do I have a community? And he quickly realized he does. He has a huge community because there are people who are willing to literally go the distance with him,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
build your base and then
yes,
let it spread.
yes. And
But
that's what he did, right? And
mhm.
so that build and that spread just, edged him over the line. Whereas on the other side, I don't think there was community. I don't people were just like, I don't like Trump, so I'm going to vote here. But I'm not American, but I'll be very honest with you. And I've said this many times. I would not vote Harris because I didn't hear anything from Harris to say, this is my community. This is what I'm building. This is the structure. Do you want to be part of this? Do you want to put effort into this is the changes we're going to make? There was a lot of people on stage. There was Obama rapping Eminem. There was a lot of that. But
Which
that
is
doesn't,
problematic. What
well,
was
yeah, that's the
yeah.
thing. It doesn't give me policy. Like, I want to know what this community is. What is this, whatever you want to call it, tribe, church, cult that you're on stage for, and what are you building? I want to know if I want to be a part of it. Trump did that very well, and so that's what I try to get at with Compassiviste is kind of how can we build the community of compassionate activists so that together we can drive this kind of compassion that we all hypocritically love. Because when you see a Jesus post, whether you're Christian or not, you love it. You're like, yeah, Jesus, amazing guy, like, yeah, I'm going to like that. Not a lot of people are like, oh, evil, awful, no. Even if you're non-Christian, I mean, Muslims, Jesus is part of Islam too. You
Mhm.
look at even the Jews today try to forget the part of the history where they put him on the cross. They try to embrace Jesus in a way as well, as this amazing person in history. So, there are times and places where it's like, oh, this is lovely, this is amazing, this person's great. Okay, how do we reignite that? There has to be a way to reignite it, right? I mean, we can't just sit there and wait for flukes to happen in the universe and then say, oh, that happened. That was a perfect example. Let's now use it for another 2,000 years.
Mm.
I think we need to be active and we need to re-engage the Martin Luther King because they're out there in the world. Like you said, grassroots, you wonder if they can ever do anything, come up and rise again. And it's beautiful that you bring that up because you're right. They don't have the capacities. The people who are really doing the good work, they're so busy doing the good work in the capacity,
Mhm.
and the scale that they are doing it, that they're not upscaling, they're not growing. It's just they're so focused in their aspect that it doesn't become national, it doesn't become global. But then how do we find those people and allow that to happen? How do we rise with them, right? That's what community is
Mm. Yeah.
in a
Well,
compassionate way.
yeah. But I guess compassion, not the way you're talking about it, but it's almost been a commodity now.
Oh, yeah.
People use it, but there's no sincerity behind it, and I think that's what makes people jaded too.
Hmm. Look
And
at the nonprofits around you.
yeah, yeah.
They are capitalizing on the word. I'm almost waiting for the day when someone says, I trademarked the word. I could just see that happening too. So it's scary where we're going. But, the hope is that we rise with compassion and resilience somehow to find community and build and be able to do that. I have one last question for you. Actually, two. One is very short, but the first one is I have friends who were in the military and they transitioned to civilian life afterwards. You said you've never been deployed, so it's going to be a little different. But even though you were never in, Afghanistan or other places in recent, wars and conflicts that the U.S. Army has been part of, have you felt any kind of, the issues generally that, all the vets go through when they come back? Or is it only something that happens when you're deployed? Because all of the stories you hear about, the PTSDs, the problems, the mental health issues, the addictions, not finding work when they come back, so many difficult things that they go through. And like I said, I have personal friends. So I saw things happen, play out in front of me. And I was like, oh my God, that's, and that it builds the hypocrisy because, the national anthem, the flag, all of that. But then the soldier comes back and just like, where is all of that? Where is all of that? Like, tears rolling down your face when the national anthem. Okay, but do something for the person who's protecting that, right? Who's supporting that, who's going out there and doing all of that. And I couldn't find it. And I was really upset about that. But you not being deployed, do you think it's only in deployment that the difficulties happen, or do they happen in Virginia and other places as well?
Well, I think, most of my time has been as a reservist. So I do notice, I noticed when I was in that very few people have a clue about the military. They just don't. If you know people in the military, then you know a lot of people in the military. But if you don't know anyone in the military, you literally don't know any, and you don't know anything about it. And that's sort of the hard part. And anytime you put on the uniform, it says it kind of plainly, U.S. Army, at least the branch that I was in. It says it right there. It's the whole gear that you put on. And, I remember, it's a Saturday. I'm going, it's early in the morning. I'm going to drill. And just the way people would just look, I would be getting gas or getting something. And just the people just look at you, like stare at you, like it's a way of, and you do feel different, because if you were in, regular clothes, nobody would look at you. And just some comments that people would make. And it's just really funny because, it's either people, they want to unload about how they feel about the government, or, they'll just make some very, very dated comment. Being a woman in the uniform, I think, some comments that I've heard over the years have been, that's funny. But I hear from people that it's the anticipation is what gets you. The people who have actually, they not just trained, but actually, run the course, so to speak, they have less of a problem adjusting than people who train. But they never get to see what they've been
training for.
All the buildup was about. And that surprised me because I said, well, gosh, not being in the theater of war, that sort of, I guess that cleanses you in a way. Now I'm speaking generally, not for everybody, but I just think we are unfair to the military because we expect an awful lot from them. And we don't give them basic respect. We just expect them to just always just be there. Even for causes, and it's pretty transparent by now. It was pretty transparent all the way back probably in the Revolutionary War. Every single war, there is this sort of, you might be cannon fodder. It might just be something that you're manipulated just like a puppet. There's scorn, and there's, you might get, 10% off when
Yeah.
you go for Jiffy Lube or something. But it's not really, and the thank you for your service sort of thing is like, gets kind of rote. It doesn't, the sincerity isn't necessarily behind it.
The
But
hypocrisy.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
hypocrisy.
it is.
I just think it's, and it was a statistic that I'd heard, like with 9/11, they said that, the majority of Americans are somewhat either intimately or tangentially related to someone who perished 9/11. Now that was 3,000 or so. But when it came to the military, most Americans like have absolutely no connection to someone who's actually served. And the people who do, as I said, it's like, all the brothers or sisters, or it's all down generations. So it's very clustered. I mean, it is a community, but it's a spread out community, but it's a community with definitely with some shared experience, but, and definitely there's, sort of army towns or,
Yes.
parts where they're, everyone, this is the industry in the town, so to speak. But, that's what I sort of, alienation, I guess I would say, because talking to people who aren't, it makes you feel like some sort of foreign being. Like, oh, did you do this? Did you do that? And they want to hear like all this stuff. And then, you get the feeling, well, maybe I'm letting this person down. Maybe I should just let them have their, their myths about things. But, everybody that I met in the military, very, very, similar to everyone else, but they just made the choice to do this. And, I made the choice, at a very, very young age to do this. And is it within my character? Did I surprise some people? Perhaps. But, I go back and forth thinking, well, did I have to do this? Or, and that's so I'm sure that really does, that gets to people depending on, how it was and what happened, because a lot of things can happen. It is you're by nature, you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation.
And by nature, I don't like the thought of combat, because I hope we can resolve our issues in a more civilized way. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we can speak. We have language, our vocal cords, our tongues, they can function that way from an evolutionary biological sense, right? I mean, if we were meant to just go at it like two lions that have crossed each other's territories or something and kill each other, then we wouldn't develop this way. What's the point? Why do I need my vocal cords if I'm never going to use it to any, de-escalation situation? Is it only for manipulation? I mean, are my vocal cords only to be a good car salesperson and sell more cars to someone by, being a good sweet talker of a car salesman? No, it has to come, with more benefits. So I think conflict resolution has to be done using our vocal cords instead of, our weapons, however they may come. But that is that's one level of the conversation. I don't like it. But then when I think of people, humans that sign up and go into that office and sign their names, they are, in a sense, accepting signing a death warrant, because that could happen. Whereas when you go into a bank and you get a job there and you sign, yes, somebody may come in and try to rob the bank and you end up dead. But I mean, the chances of that are very low. And also, it's not a contingent part of your employment. Whereas when you go and sign up to the military, you're really sacrificing. I mean, this is the highest form of altruism that we know within community. I am going to be the person who self-assigns to protect my community, in essence. I really can't find a nobler type of human when you think about it from that perspective, just from the personal perspective of, I see my building and I see all the kids here and I see all the, the elderly, the husbands and wives and, the people who live here. And I think, I don't know, there's some wild dogs in the neighborhood and they may attack the kids or something. So I'm going to stand shift every day by the park and make sure I protect them. So if the wild dogs come, I get hurt. I'm fine with that because I care about my community. That is a very noble cause. Now, make that much bigger, and you've got
Mm.
military. But then the society look at the military, and I see this all the time in the US specifically, because there's a lot of marketing for this. Exactly like you said, person wears the uniform, and on the one hand, it's thank you for your service, let them cut through the line. There's a line going around the block for Starbucks, but you're wearing a uniform, go ahead. But these are hypocritical to me because who cares? Like, what does that even
Mm.
mean? Is there value to that? No. Like, they could have stood in line for 15 minutes. Nothing would have happened. And I'm sure they don't even care. But
Yeah.
when it comes to the things that matter, are we caring for this? How many people, and I say this because I know people who were in the military, I knew people who were in the military and the wife's there with kids. Yeah, okay, there's good income. They can support themselves, whatever. How many people actually went out of their ways within that community to make sure that wife and children are okay? They have no necessary needs, or she's not lonely, or the kids something, whatever it may be. Not a lot. Not on a daily basis, not a lot, the community is not there in that sense. More community happens through, for example, army wives. They find each other and then
Sure.
they kind of bond, right? Because they're in the same circumstances, and the community in the negative, on the crisis part of it, the difficulties they're going through, they bond through the difficulties. They're not bonding through the positives of the experience of them being military wives sitting in their town, not knowing if their husband was part of the group that just got blown up in Afghanistan, right? And having to go through that stress. They go through it as a community collectively, and it's not a bad feeling. But the rest of the US is not there. They're going to their work, they're making their money, they're doing all of the things that is basically provided for because there is that value of the military that allows this process to kind of go on. Nobody contributes, nobody cares. That is a hypocrisy. It's a real hypocrisy. Like, stop pretending like if you took your hat off at the anthem, or you praise, or you let a army officer who came back wounded and throw the first ball at a baseball game. Those are like, don't fall for those lies. Be involved, care for them, do something, right? I mean, this is the person allowing you your freedom, as you say. So, and so do something. And that's one of my biggest issues, starting Compassiviste, is breaking through the hypocrisy.
Yeah, I definitely see with that. In in the book, there's a Vietnam vet
Mm-hmm.
in it, and he does speak of someone, and this is loosely based on a story that I knew from a school that I worked at, a college that I worked at, and there was someone who was deployed and he died the first day.
Mm.
He was, and they gave him his degree. Talking about the school that he had left to go there, and they said, "Well, we took care of him." And I'm like, if you took care of him, he would still be alive. He wouldn't have
Exactly.
died, cleaning his weapon and
Right.
all this. So it does sort of make you think. I said, is that what you're calling taking care of someone? I mean, this is,
Bringing a flag back to their 7-year-old. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, and
is
it's all
that
folded
care?
up and
And then
all
that's
that.
it. And then when they leave after that filmed procession, nothing
Yeah,
happens. Like, what, you know?
yeah,
Listen,
it's
and I didn't want to give that away in your book. You said it, not me. I read that part. I didn't want to say any of it. I just generalized. But I'll be very frank with you. That's one of the reasons why I said okay to the book, because our head of publishing said I like the book, and I said okay, I'll look at it, and I looked at it, and I was like, ooh, I like that part, and there's a couple of other parts too, but I really like that part because it does bother me that we have zero community with the people who are really at the front line of our support systems. I mean, even in the pandemic, the nurses
No,
and all
yeah,
the people who
yeah.
were there, it's all
Hmm.
forgotten. It's all old news. Like, we don't even remember that. Had it not been for them, where would we have been right now? I mean, imagine there was no healthcare all of a sudden. There was no doctors and there was no nurses, and we went through the pandemic. What would have really happened, right? And how are we reacting to them kind of allowing a world to continue in its economic and social aspects because of their presence and their support systems and them really stepping up? I mean, you're talking about this pandemic. Imagine the first days. Nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, a nurse shows up and is taking people in. I'd be scared. I'd be like, no, you have COVID. Don't come close to me. I don't know what COVID is. It kills. Get away from me. It's true. Those are my cowardly responses. Wearing a mask, gloves, doubling up, isolating, all that stuff. But there is a person, 7 a.m., in front of the hospital door, waiting to help somebody who has COVID. How do you repay that person?
Well,
It's
you
almost
don't.
impossible. But we don't even care to. That's the problem. It's not like
We
we've
don't
reached
remember.
out to them. Yeah, we don't remember it. It's like, we don't reach out and say, look, what you did is priceless. It's actually priceless. But unfortunately, we cannot do priceless rewards. So here's a priced reward, whatever it may be. It may be a statue. It may be $100. Whatever it may be. Here's some kind of, something. All we did was the first few days we clapped for them at a specific time in every town, like
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
people came together. Remember that? And then it
Yes, yes.
stopped a month into it and stuff. We forgot that too. We're like, they're doing it anyways. They don't need the praise. So let's. I'm going to watch my TV. I don't care about the clapping anymore. And then less people showed up, and then it ended, and then that was the end of it. So hypocrisy was a big thing for me, and I saw it like kind of through compassion and resilience and honesty and the search for honesty come through your book a lot. So yeah, please, whoever's watching, listening, read the book. There's a lot that you can take from it, and there's a lot that you can, I think, relate to it. And my last question, you came to Compassiviste Publishing. Why?
Uh, well, I forget how I happened onto your website, but I looked through the books there and I looked up the books after that, ordering them. And I like the philosophy, and I think it definitely, you don't necessarily see that with publishing houses. Some things are themed like we publish sci-fi or whatever, but
Mm.
what you're publishing along those thematic matters, I just wanted to see if I could be associated.
Be a
And
part of the community.
yeah, yeah, but it was this was the third time this book was accepted, but I wasn't happy with the other
Mm.
places over the years, and just talking with them what they were thinking. But um, I did like your bench and what, as I said, what it is that your publishing house was doing. So I think it was a good fit, and I'm so far so far so good.
Great. And we're
Everything.
glad to have you. And you know
Thanks.
what? There are two other women who are Army vets at Compassiviste. So you're
Oh,
number
okay.
3 now. Yeah, I know, right? And people get shocked. They're like, there aren't that many women in the Army to start with, but you end up with 10%, 15, 20% of your staff is Army vets somehow. And I was like, I didn't choose it that way. It just happened. I think they understand community better than others.
Hmm.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But one day we'll figure it out. Yeah. Anything else you want to say?
No, thank you for the time. And this is a great conversation. I feel
Yeah.
so stimulated. So this
Thank you.
is
I try to get people to get to know the author, and I think it's important to know the author when you read their book, because then it's kind of like that person speaking with you or talking to you as opposed to a stranger. Because the first time this happened to me was I had to read a book from one of my professors in school. Reading the book of a person I knew personally and interacted with and understood their mind and how it works in a way. I was like, oh, I get it. I get why, the criticisms changed for me because I kind of understood where they're coming from and how they're writing about it. But, when you read people you don't even know, you're like, oh, I wouldn't say that. But no, you don't know, where they're coming from, where, what their mind is. So I figured I start this series of, always interviewing our authors so that people kind of know who they're reading in a sense, right? It becomes a dialogue more than just a one-way directional kind of unidirectional conversation. So thank you, Allison Wittenberg, for speaking on Compassiviste Dialogues. And thank you for your courage, bravery, and compassion in your search for honesty. Those are natural compassivist traits. So you came home, so to speak. You're in your community now, and most of all, I'm inspired. By the way, I'm not going to give it away, but the way you kind of present the characters, and to me, they learn to evolve as opposed to kind of, or at least they learn to accept and learn from life in essence, which was something that I really liked because I really didn't want to promote a voice that says, "Oh, forget it. Oh, it's okay. You'll get." No, sit with it, kind of go through it. So it gives people hope. So I love that. To our audience, please subscribe to Compassiviste Dialogues so I can bring you more authors and more exciting people to share. Follow us on our social media. All links to Allison Wittenberg, Compassiviste Publishing, and Compassiviste are listed below. We're here to help change the world together. I'm Ali Horriyat.